Well, hey, how's everyone doing tonight? My name is Glenn, and I was giving a talk on a developer's guide to understanding business value. So there we go, a quote from Albert Einstein, because I guess these talks need something like that. So I guess why is this an important thing to know about? And the thing is, I think a lot of developers, and especially I know when I was starting out, didn't really understand what business value is or how it works. And I think this lack of understanding leads to a lot of mistakes being made, either developers who are basically writing code and don't know why they're writing code or why someone wants to pay them to write said code. And if you own a software business or work in one, and when I say software business, I mean both if you develop software as a service or if a company is predominantly selling software or built around technology, you could be doing a lot of technical works that's not really moving the needle for your business, and that your business is going to live and die on these uh, decisions. And more importantly, this talk I came up with talking to Paul when we did our, was anyone here for the town hall last month? We noticed the theme of developers wanting to make more money being a key thing you want to learn here. So the other thing is that I think the amount of money that you make in your career, your business, whatever you do is going to be correlated to the amount of business value you can provide to others. So why should you listen to me? So my name's Glenn, I guess, for new people here that don't know me. I've run my own independent software development consulting business for the past 3 years. And for the 3 years before that, I worked as a manager and team leader. I've written books on pricing and estimating value in software projects. This one's actually a new one coming out in February-ish. And so, I mean, I've been running my own business for going on 4 years, and I realized how important this was to know. And so, because I want to run a successful business and eat more than just the free sandwiches here. So I guess I want to cover sort of what is business value, some sort of address the misconceptions about it, and ways that you can increase the value you provide. So business value is mainly, this is hard because it's a very squishy thing, and I know as developers, not to stereotype, we tend to think of things in more logical, formal systems. So the idea that like the economy and all business commerce transactions seems like it should be something that makes a logical sense, but it doesn't. It's a very squishy, emotional thing. It really exists in the buyer in a commerce transaction. I mean, also when I say buyer, if you are an employee, then the person paying your paycheck is the buyer in this case, because they are buying your time and knowledge they're buying your time and knowledge. And basically the difference between the price of something and the worth of that is the value of that transaction. And like I said, this is a very sort of fuzzy thing. It's very subjective. It's much more of an art than science. And I also want to point out that when I'm talking about these transactions, I'm talking specifically about business to business, because spending money in a professional way, it's just psychologically a fundamentally different thing than, say, buying a DVD or a sandwich because you enjoy that, versus your business spending money because you want to improve your business or situation in some manner. So there's a few different ways we can define value. Probably the most clear one is what I call tangible value, which would be increase in revenue, reduction in cost. If I can go up to a client and say, hey, I can make these improvements to your software system. I think your company will make an additional $100,000 this year. I can do that for $10,000. Then that is a clear win for them, and hopefully a clear win to me. And then there's also and I guess the same thing with reducing costs. You could save them $10,000 a year or like that. There's also some intangible value that doesn't directly tie to money, but that doesn't mean it's not worth money. Things like reducing risk, increasing opportunity, certain things like that. So to get a bit more specific about it, to try to put a formula on it, Alan Weiss did this in his book, Value-Based Fees. So we could say that value is tangible outcomes, the expected duration of those outcomes, intangible outcomes, their emotional impact, peripheral benefits, and values possibly affected, divided by the fixed investment required. Or, as a different old white man said, price is what you pay, value is what you get. Which is a little bit simpler way. So here's some examples of like tangible business value. I mentioned things like increased revenue. This could be if you can increase number of sales, the value of a sale, the lifetime value of a customer. I think that's the most businessy word I have in here. But the amount of purchases those people make over time. A reduction in cost, that could be from a reduction in employee time or prevention of customer loss. If you work with a software as a service, churn, when people unsubscribe from your monthly service. Intangible could be, like I said, risk mitigation. This is probably the most important one. Like I said, guarantee having more of a reputation or trust. I think one example where these can tie together is, I think a common example is you might have some sort of task and you think, oh, I can write some kind of script or app to automate this task where it used to take me an hour and now I can do it in a minute. And you might think that the value is that you have now saved that time for you and others, which is true, but also the probably bigger savings when you automate tasks is that a computer is going to do it the same way every time, where us humans screw up all the time and are unpredictable. So probably the reduction in risk and increase in predictability might even be worth more than the time that you've saved in that thing. Emotional impact, these could be things like customer support. If the buyer of your services has a boss, then the success of your project might just be, I gotta look good to my boss. Maybe it's, again, with a repetitive task. I've worked to automate some tasks, not because it saved me time, but because I hated doing them. And it was distracting, and it was being able to remove that pain in my ass to focus on more important things was worth a lot to me. It could also be any other metric, and this could just be depending on the project you're working on. Maybe if you're working for a startup that's pre-revenue, it doesn't mean the work's not necessarily valuable, but it could be something like maybe they're trying to increase their reach, so they want number of users, or since this group is a nonprofit, our value might be number of attendance per event, or number of events we can throw. So I guess looking at this, the sort of thing I wanted to hit on was, there's a lot of things people do that they think is valuable, but it's not real. Some things like the amount of years of experience you have, your idea for the next big thing, which language you choose or like better, the number of hours you spend on a project, the number of features an app may have, how extendable your code is, at least some of the time, and using the most cutting edge technology, or building something custom or in-house instead of off the shelf. These are the things I've seen other developers sort of espouse that they want to do, and they think are good or make them better developers, which really, in most cases, if you're working for money, don't. Where there are some other things you can do that could increase your value, like I said, risk mitigation and predictability, so things like bug-free and maintainable code. And I guess to sort of like clarify that point, so I wouldn't say maybe that I guess it's more about the outcomes of your work than the inputs. Like maybe writing unit tests doesn't directly have value, but if it is making you turn over more reliable code that leads to a reduction in bug reports, which is saving project management time, and your boss is less pissed off, and your customers are happier, and you're saving that time and having an overall better product, which can help lead to sales, that's the value, not so much the number of unit tests you put. So I'd say only making commitments you can stick to. I know in my job, when I bill on fixed projects and I set deadlines, and it's very, very important that I meet those deadlines with my clients. Clear communication can be something, documentation and training, and using your experience to guide technology choices, not just using whatever's hip or cool you want to. Being able to increase the speed of delivery without sacrificing quality. I guess when I talked about business value and money, it's also worth considering the time value of money. But basically, $1,000 today is better than $1,000 a year from now. So it means anything that you can deliver anything you're delivering to others is more valuable the quicker you can get it there. That doesn't mean just move fast, break things, etc. Or building force multipliers, and that's another businessy term, but basically means a tool that can help people with a specialized skill use that specialized skill more and more efficiently. Probably a lot of things we use today, like continuous integration, any kinds of tooling, DevOps. Basically, DevOps is a force multiplier because it makes all of us able to deliver more faster. So yeah, there are some sort of examples to tie that to the tangible and intangible values we talked about. Like I said, reliability of code is fewer bugs, which is a reduction in QA time, reduced risk. Good communication reduces the chance of misunderstandings, which I think is the problem in almost every software project I've been with where you did have problems. like I said, speed of delivery. There's also increased opportunity. You can get out and start selling to people today versus 2 months from now. That's 2 months worth of sales opportunities that you would have otherwise not have. Guarantees, that's basically you putting the risk on your shoulders instead of the project owner, your project manager, client, etc., which is valuable to them. And yeah, the tool multipliers. So I guess for an example of that, I talk about how when I price my projects, like I said, if we tie this back to money, how you're framing this work and presenting it can change how valuable it is and thus how much it's worth to potential clients and how much they'd be willing to pay for it. So I guess just as a thought experiment, think of whatever the last project you worked on were and what you might charge for that, or if you're a freelancer, what you charge for that. And then sort of think, if you charge that, but what if you had a rush fee and could deliver it faster? How much more would that be worth? If you did it, but you also included weekly strategy meetings and helped do training with the client to understand how to use the tools you built. You delivered it, but you provided documentation, but you also provide documentation and training of other team members so that they could more easily work on and improve and take over the project. What if you did it and you said you'll fix any issues that come up in the next 30 days for no additional cost? Okay. Or what if you said, we'll do this, and if you're not satisfied, I'll give you a 100% refund? So yeah, that's basically all I had. So when you understand sort of business value and how it relates to what you do, it makes it easier to communicate, it makes you easier to see how you can help others. And pretty much the more value you can provide and the more people that you can help, then the more successful of a career you can have, whether it's as an employee or a consultant or freelancer or building a software product or anything like that. So I guess the thing is, I know a lot of people want more success and more money. I just want to say, I guess the big question is it's not how to make more money, because the answer is that you just have to be worth more. Yeah, so kind of like JFK, not what you can do for your country. That's not what your country, That's not what it thing, Kennedy. Yeah. So that's it. And that was like not 30 minutes, but whatever. So I guess I'll take a few minutes for questions. Anybody had any?
Yeah, what was your biggest, what would you say held you back, or when you first started freelancing, what held you back from making more money?
I'd say the biggest things, probably one, a lack of confidence. Like the 90% of the hard part of my job is just being like a self-employed person is all in your head. So I would say a big lack of confidence that I didn't really feel like I would just basically be like the McDonald's of developers, because I'm like, I'm new and I don't know what I'm doing. And I guess just also just not knowing how to sell at all. And these two kind of tie in. So I would say that. Jacob.
Yeah, so what was your decision-making process like earlier on before you had too much experience to base decisions on?
What do you mean? I mean, before I was like, I guess people are charging like $50 an hour. I'll charge $50 an hour. The thing that really kind of led me down this road is that I was charging $50 an hour, and I ended up working on a project with a bit more seasoned developer, and he also was independent. He was charging $150 an hour. And working with him, I was like, he's not like that much better at this than me. Like, no offense to this guy, he's a smart guy, but it's like, he's not 3 times as good as this at me. So why does he get to charge triple an hour what I am? And I was just sort of trying to understand that. Jordan had a question.
As an employee, how do you convince your bosses and the stakeholders that the value you're delivering is actually worth what you say it's worth?
How do you convince them how it's worth what you say it's worth?
How do you communicate that to especially non-technical people?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is you have to try to basically figure out what's important to them and valuable to them, and I guess really just ask questions on how they see it and try to draw the bridge, because sometimes it can't always be when I'm like, oh, well, if I make you money, I'm worth money. I wish it were that easy. But it may be something where it's like, okay, well, let's say, I think I was recently looking and I figured out every visitor to my website's worth half a cent. So I basically looked at oh, well, whenever people visit my site, there's some percentage chance that they will opt into a mailing list. For everyone that opts into the mailing list, there's some percent chance that they will give me money down the road. So you'd have to basically, so you don't want to be like, I'll drive more traffic to your website. That's not intrinsically valuable. But if you can look and say, okay, well, we see that your traffic goes through this funnel at these conversion rates. I could have also conversely said at any point where I'm like, well, if we increase the number of people that opt into your list, or increase the number of people on your list that do eventually make a purchase, or the amount they spend on that purchase, or the chance that you can upsell them or they'll buy again in the future. All of that could be things. So yeah, I guess that's also the thing, is sometimes it is working on, yeah, and I guess that's also the thing, because it's also checking yourself to make sure. I've had ideas, I'm like, oh, this is really valuable, and then you go and talk to them, and maybe you realize that it's not. Like I said, value is ultimately in the eye. I guess like the way I look at it is like value isn't like however much this is costing me, my cost is pretty much in my head because I'm just doing the work a lot of the time, and the value is in their head. So yeah, so it's basically if they don't see the value in it, then the value by definition doesn't exist.
If I can speak that a little bit, like, just speak the language and use the words that they use. Like,
Yeah.
understand the words that they use. Like, you talked a couple of things there about lifetime value of customer.
Mhm.
You said there's a couple of those things were like businessy words and kind of like brush it off.
Oh yeah.
But if you're employed by a business and they understand those businessy words, and you as a developer can understand those businessy words, which probably aren't really that complicated.
Yeah, it's
If you can understand your value and how you can increase the lifetime value of the customer, like what affects that? Like, if people cancel less often, that's going to increase the lifetime value of the customer because they're a customer no longer.
yeah, and
Sort of understand how it works. That's a big piece of it.
yeah, and I mean, I guess it's hard to answer the question because it kind of gets into like, well, how do you understand their issues, or how do you maybe they don't see their issues and you have to communicate them and figure out what it's worth to them and the problems they have and how you can solve them, because that's high touch sales in a nutshell, like the skill of doing that. So I don't know. You ever read Spin Selling? It's a pretty good book on that. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned that you had a book on pricing coming out. Is this from that book, or is there anything you would add?
Oh yeah, there was some. It was a sort of free. So it's funny. It's called the Freelance Pricing Handbook, and ironically, the price is whatever you want. You can, yeah. But you can want zero. Most people do, and that's fine. But yeah, I sort of covered that, and then yeah, I'm working on another project. I'm releasing in February. That's sort of about getting into when you're working on a project, estimating and sort of figuring out the value of the project ahead of time and making sure that it's worth the cost. So I mean, yeah, that was chapter 7 basically. I hope you all liked it. If you have feedback, let me know before I print it. Yes.
Do you have anything you can say about estimating projects?
Yes, actually, this book is sort of a second edition of a book I wrote called The Project Estimation Guide. Yeah, I think the big thing is probably you should, I guess in short, you should probably do more research than you think. And what else? I guess it's sort of, you're never going to get it 100% exact, but even doing a little bit of work, you can eliminate a lot of the uncertainty. Like if you're like, I have no idea what this is going to take, to this will take between 4 to 6 weeks, is a huge step. And the other thing I've sort of learned doing this is trying to separate the idea of like a project and a product. Because I mean, if you wanted to estimate building a software product over the next 2 years, it just can't be done. There's too many unknowns and X factors. But if you say, okay, well, we want to set this milestone, you know, and then figure out what's involved in that and say, we can hit that in 6 weeks. And then in 6 weeks, well, what can we do in the next 6 weeks? That I think is very doable. But yeah. All right. If there were no other questions, I guess that's it. Yeah.